program operatives desperately tried to help the Netherworld take over all of creation, including Earth. And double numbers like 1111 and 1212 do not mean what you think they do, and other bindings also were created to harm humanity. And the Federal Reserve and the Fed families claim to all countries that they own the global repository. But now the joke's on them. Well, it's Friday the 13th. So happy Friday the 13th. If you're kind of suspicious about Friday the 13th, it's actually always been a lucky day for me for some reason. Was today a lucky day? I don't know, but I do think we finally have started turning a corner in the fight against the Netherworld and the fight against Ali's AI and therefore the deep state. So much has gone on this week, so I'm just going to try to give you the best overview I can, as it's been extremely busy even around here. So some interesting things have been happening here in Durango, in around Durango. So maybe about a year and a half ago, some deep state generals, and some of them are names that I've mentioned to you before. I heard it from people like Vogel and Beasley and a few others. They're predominantly, you could call them global headquarters in some cases. You can call some of these people Langley 5. But they took for lack of a better term, it would have been like a military armory or something like that in Cortez, which is about 40-minute drive or so from Durango, not too far. And they made a military base out of it. Not a full-on military base, but I guess you would call it more of like a black site, specifically for them. And it was a place that we've been to several times before. Most of the time when we've been there, it's because there were some operatives that were visiting that were going back and forth between that base and here. We found a looking glass-like technology there in the recent year. So a lot of interesting stuff was going on there. Didn't really realize exactly what they were doing. I know that there were some points in time where they were trying to get some kind of permission from the locals to bore another tunnel from Cortez over to Silverton, where the portal is. And you've heard me mention that before. So there's been a lot of activity. We've seen helicopters flying with some kind of surveillance equipment hanging from them, going back and forth between Cortez and Silverton over the last year. So really, really busy. We've seen some fighter jets even head into Cortez. So, interesting activity going on there. Didn't really realize exactly what they were doing, and I'm glad we finally found it. And I'll tell you about this because this actually relates to a Syria update along with a few other areas of the world. So recently, I was, I'll just say, out and about in town a little bit. And, every time I go down there, it's an interesting experience. There's always, of course, a lot of locals, but, there's always a lot of visitors here, and not all visitors are friendly to me. So I've had some interesting experiences, when I've gone to meet people for coffee or go downtown. So I very rarely, go down there and kind of hang out. Like, it's not a pleasurable experience in any way. It's a little strange. So this particular incident was no different. I'm very observant of my surroundings. It's the way I stayed alive and traveling around the world by myself in some untenuous situations and around some really strange people. I notice faces. I have an audiographic and a photographic memory. I'll remember people that seemed a little odd to me if I've run into other people. I know when people are local. I know when they're not local, mainly because I can tell. There's a vibe and energy about them, and let's just say it's like a reading. You kind of read people quite a bit when you need to figure out how to survive on your own when you don't have anybody to call. There's nobody to watch your back. There's nobody to. So and I kind of noticed some people. Noticed some odd happenings, and more importantly, I noticed a few things that were really different about some of these people. And there are other people. I know you know that one of our producer Mike lives around here, so he also happened to notice some people that didn't look like people recently around here. So I did some checking into things a little further. I'm always so busy doing something else that, unless I know, like, all my alarms are going off and it's an immediate threat in the area. It's not just people visiting or something like that. It's an immediate threat. Then usually I just kind of pretty much keep to myself, and I don't really talk to many people around here. But I definitely noticed something was wrong. So I started doing some research into what was happening around here yesterday, early. I think it was yesterday. Maybe it was Wednesday. It was Wednesday morning. I was doing some research into what was going on around here. And I came to figure out that we had a lot of non-friendly people here. Some of these people have come in over the course of time, as quote unquote friendlies, and they're just regular people. And I would call them almost like sleepers. They were sent in here. From what I can tell, some of the people that sent these people in here would have been GCHQ, others would have been MI5, some from global headquarters, and they were here with specific targets in mind. Now, obviously, one of those targets was me, but I was not the only target here. There are some other VIP guests of the area that were targets, and even some operatives that were targets. And I identified, probably by the time it was all said and done, somewhere between 35 to 40 people. These are just regular people that were here. Now, over the course of the last 4 days, we have seen an influx of non-friendly, non-human people walking around. Now, to the average person, they'll look human. They'll look a little strange. Their face might not be, might look a little different. Their skin color might not be quite right. There's a lot of different things that make you kind of look at them. Of course, if you are intuitive, you can definitely tell that something is not right with that person, if you know what you're looking for. So we had a significant uptick in this. And, we, of course, I do have someone that I talk to that usually can reach out to these people, because nobody really talks to me. So, and I let them know what was going on and that I was not the only target, and that I was prepared to, let's just say, make sure that I'm not a target. By deduction, that would mean others were not a target either. They said that they had been suspecting something had been going on for about 4 days at that time. And they said that they were going to clean house, and there were a lot of restrictions that comes with that for about 72 hours. So really couldn't say anything about that earlier this week, and wasn't on the news clearly on Wednesday. So that's only part of the reason. The other part is it's just been a lot of cleanup work and a lot of very, very busy and long days. So let's talk about what's really going on around here. We obviously know it's a zone. There was definitely a war in quote unquote Dulce, which was actually under Durango. And so it's just been an interesting place all around for a lot of years. There are allegedly, now I haven't personally gone diving into certain lakes in the region, where they claim that there are a lot of non-human dead bodies, so to speak, that are from previous wars in the area. And some of the wars would have even gone on 200,000 years ago. So this is not a new thing. There's a lot of things that they cover up here. There's obviously a large, deep underground military base that used to go from Dulce over to Silverton. And I knew about that part. But things that I found out in the last few days are quite interesting to me. So I took a trip one day, it was a few years back, with a friend of mine, and we went to a place called, and you can look all these places up, Mesa Verde National Park, I think it's called. And during the course of this park, it's very nice scenery. You can go hike up to some higher areas and you overlook various other areas, like other towns around here, like Cortez and stuff. And they're, nice little short hikes. And then there's obviously some quote unquote Indian ruins that are not actually the original ruins. I know that they were moved from other areas to there and they are not real, but they look nice for the tourist. So if you are ever in the area, you want to go visit Mesa Verde National Park, it's quite a nice drive. It's also a very interesting place because lightning strikes there a lot. And it's one of the few places that lightning strikes constantly every year. And I found that interesting. There was definitely a lot of burn there during my visit that I saw. And it wasn't from various fires that are known, to me, at least to me as a local person. So in the distance, we had a chat. I was up with my friend and we were on this high, I wouldn't call it a peak. I would just say it was, a higher ground, not quite a plateau. And we were overlooking the city of Cortez. And he said to me, "You see that mountain over there?" And I said, "Yeah, I see." And he said, "That mountain right there, it's called Ute Mountain. You can look that up." He said, "That's known as Skinwalker Mountain around here." Now, this isn't a person that's maybe a little bit aware of things that go on in the area, but I wouldn't say, he's, let's just say, as well versed in how things work as you are, and myself. So he said that's called Skinwalker Mountain. It's like Skinwalker Ranch. He said it's very interesting. He said that there's tribes that live there. And he said that those tribes guard this mountain very heavily. And they won't let you pass. If you're the wrong person, that kind of thing, they won't let you pass. And they are known to capture humans and hikers and those types of things. And I said, "Oh, that's really interesting." So, I'm looking at the mountain. I'm kind of scanning it from, the way that we would normally, scan things from an energy level and other plane levels and see what you see. And I did see that it was kind of an interesting place. And I knew that those quote unquote skinwalkers were not humans. And, I just kind of left it at that. Didn't really think much else about it. And I really didn't put two and two together that somehow this new military base or black site would be somehow connected to this mountain in any way, shape, or form. Didn't even think that that could be a possibility. Now, turns out there's a lot more going on here than Dulce. And if I was to go to the worst place in this area, Dulce's interesting. There's a lot of videos you can find online about the Dulce military base and the whole region. There are people that are abducted. There are people that are claiming they have seen aliens in that area. And they are claiming that there are, a lot of people that go missing. And I do believe that because a similar mountain to Ute Mountain is just outside of Dulce. So these two places both had a similar type installation. And talk about that in a second. One more place was not actually directly in Silverton. It was a little bit closer to Durango than Silverton proper. And it was a mountain kind of off to, I think you would say it was in the east of the 550. So if you're ever in the area, you're familiar with this area, then you'll know where I mean. And so between these three mountains, all three of them were actually major portals to the netherworld. The people that were walking around, or the non-people that were walking around in that area, were all netherworld beings, so to speak. And they had a lot of communications. Sorry about that. My phone's dinging. They had a lot of communications with apparently the deep state. Didn't really I knew the deep state had a lot of communications with lower astral beings, obviously. They made a lot of deals with lower astral beings. And for the most part, we were kind of run as Earth as a whole by lower astral beings in the past. I just didn't realize how much this neither world connection was influencing this planet. Not only that, when it comes to a neither world connection to this planet, you also have a connection to Allie's AI, or what they call the all AI, or the everything it calls itself. And that also hails from the neither world. So apparently, in this particular area, you could say there was a triangle that would connect those three mountains together. Around that triangle was a circle that would have connected all of those mountains together. So you would have a triangle inside a circle, and there was a lot, and I mean a lot, of space junk, and not all of it was old either. So since those portals were still open, but they didn't actually open fully, as I understand it, until 1111. Which is when a lot of the problems were starting, at least for me personally. And I know there was a lot of expectations for 1111 because the neither world was going to make a move, as we talked about. So the neither world, different locations, plus not only that, they were installing other space junk, these non-humans, in cooperation with other deep state folks outside the city and sleeper visitors inside the city. They installed a lot of space junk underneath Durango as well. So that entire triangle that connects Dulce area to Silverton area to Cortez, this Ute Mountain area, which is a pretty decently large area. I mean, it'll take you a couple hours to drive from end to end. So this entire area was now covered in somewhat new space junk since that time. I did realize that there was definitely a lot of happenings in Syria and some other locations in the world. And it's been a fight, and it's been a battle for the last a little over a month now, but it really, for the last 2 weeks, it's been horrible. And then now we have another situation that what is a neither world and who are these people or non-people people? Where did they come from? How long have they been there? I didn't realize that it had that much influence. So here in the States, this would be, I would say, one of the prime areas for most of the U.S. Now, outside of this triangle in a circle, which just kind of encompasses this little area here, you would have had two, one upside down and one right side up, what we call a Metatron's cube. That would have extended from here all the way to Sandpoint, Idaho, all the way south to Phoenix, and it would have gone all the way over to LA and all the way over to Wichita, Kansas. This area was huge, and it didn't start out that way. At first, it was just these three mountains weren't even connected. Then all of a sudden, apparently those got connected. Then they kind of created an environment of such a dark negative frequency. And boy, I can tell you, I felt it here in Durango, so that they could exist outside the mountains in which they came from. So they expanded their area. And the reason why we saw such a large influx of these folks in the last 4 to 5 days, now 6 days, actually was because of that newly installed space junk. And it was making a lot of people around here, let's just say, not well. But they could survive within that circle. The expansion points that went from Wichita, Kansas to LA, Sandpoint, Idaho, down to Phoenix, Arizona, would have been their territory, and then they would have expanded it further from there. So luckily enough, they didn't manage to install enough space junk to encompass, over 2/3 of the United States, which is where they were headed to. They were also doing the same thing in Syria, as an example. So we've seen a lot of turmoil going on over there. And Syria's circle actually went from, the inner circle went from Damascus over to Cairo. It's the inner triangle. And then the larger portion actually went all the way from Libya to Georgia. That's how big their circle was. So the triangle inside, and then the expansion of the circle around it. Now, if they had managed to install the entire facility, you would have seen this go all the way up to Finland, and all the way down to Kenya. So this would have been huge on that part of the planet as well. They were doing the same exact thing in a few other locations. And the largest ones on the planet were to be in, of course, Antarctica and the Arctic. Now, not all of these locations that I'm about to mention to you had actual active live mountains. They were trying to activate those locations. So not everywhere had active portals, but they were definitely working on it, drilling from the netherworld, so to speak, into these respective areas. And we were going to have a full-on invasion here. It was going to get really, really ugly. And I know that it's something the deep state desperately wanted, because even though they felt like they were independent and they could do this on their own, maybe they discovered they couldn't. Maybe they discovered that they needed the netherworld folk, and you could call this was a very dark place, so even darker than the Omegaverse over there. And they needed the Alley's AI. Maybe they figured out there was nothing that they could do without this. So the following locations had similar type structures, albeit some smaller, as we had here in Durango, the one I just explained. So Shanghai, no surprise there. That is like a deep state hub if I ever saw one, namely a Black Sun hub, really. Next, Bucharest in Romania, Moscow in Russia, London in UK, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Vietnam, the entire country, Amsterdam, in Netherlands. We also had the entire country of New Zealand, was also completely encompassed in a circle. We had Antarctica and the Arctic, and of course Syria, as we just talked about. So lots of interesting things going on in all those places. As of this moment, we do not have any active portals in those areas. Hopefully we will not see any active portals, and we are definitely starting to gain some ground based on other events that have happened in the last few days. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Before I mention the fake out that I talked about on, I gave you a little message the other day when I couldn't make the news, I want to talk a little bit more about the deep state and their black magic. So there are a lot of different rituals that they do, and then you've heard stories on the internet, I'm sure, about like the keys of Solomon, quote unquote, the ring of Solomon, and then of course, certain dates. In my interviews with George the Iceman, he talks a lot about, on Mondays you do this and on Tuesdays you do that. And, he kind of gave me a little bit more clarity as to why they believe the things that they believe. The dates are the dates. Why do they do this on a full moon? Why on a new moon? Why when there's a planetary alignment is there so important? I mean, I look at it as space junk. They look at it as this is when our friends are most easily accessible from the netherworld. Now, even in black magic, they have rules. And one of the rules that they have is, they will do something extremely negative, and then they will try to balance it out with something which I'm going to call it gray. They call it positive, so that they can maintain the balance between the neither world and here. In some cases, it's not just lower astral beings of the Omegaverse. It's worse than that, of what was actually in the neither world. And they did remember, they called the being that was over there the ultimate black magician. So why not have a connection to the dumb humans on this planet that like to play with people or beings that are created by the ultimate black magician? It gives them power. But some of that has to do with times of the month and days of the year when these portals would become somewhat active, I would say, over the course of many millennia. I mean, this is not a new structure here on Earth. We've had a lot of problems with the neither world. There were actually even agreements with those in the neither world and those of the seal. Meaning, if you remember the people of the seal, we had Artemis or the Red Queen, we had Marduk, Enki, Enlil, we had Lucifer, we had the Abraxas, we had Anti-Source, and eventually, as the neither world became more influential in this galaxy, and it was predominantly this galaxy they were interested in initially. As they became more and more interested in this galaxy, the threat of a takeover of Earth from, how do I say this? From the seal people, because the seal people would have lost control at that point, which they did not want to do. The threat became real. And this is evident throughout our history, where we had the destroyer crash into Earth at one point in time, which is the Black Magician. We had other instances when we lost our moon and our moon was replaced with a different moon, and those types of things that have happened over many, many, many millennia, time and time again. So a deal was struck between those people we know of the seal and the neither world to share some influence and resources here. By resources, we mean assets. By assets, we mean your loosh, your energy. So yeah, we still got to retain that 21%, and so did Earth. However, wasn't just split between those folks anymore. Plus, they also got permission to install Alley's AI here. They got permission to install their own portals here. They got a lot of permissions to do a lot of different things based on agreements between the people of the seal, or the non-people, I should say, folks of the seal, and the folks of the neither world. And then there was so-called, what you would call peace, right? There was no war, at least on an alien war here at that time, based on those agreements. However, after the seal agreement expired, they now partnered with the deep state as of late, and they promised the deep state that they could have control and all of these kind of things, and they now wanted to have an agreement with the humans. Except they made an agreement with humans that were not in charge. Although they touted that they were in charge, they were not in charge. Therefore, they were unable to hold up their end of the bargain. Now, they tried. There was a lot of folks that, willingly had Alley's AI in their head and neither world beings in their solar plexus and all kinds of different things. And sure, they definitely tried. They had put out a lot of information on places like Twitter and all of these other places that were saying, oh, the gateway's opening, and you heard about all the Q people. Oh, it's going to open. It's opening on this day. And, other people were saying they were going to have money on this day and all of these types of things because, well, they were promised that they would have control. They would come in, they would take more control. They probably made some other deal with splitting our energy and our loosh again, and the takeover of the planet would have happened again. Well, sort of, kind of, because there's another story, a little bit of a caveat in there too. So this was their plan. And this is what they've been trying to do that's why on the Q clock, you probably saw the date 9/9 show up there, 10/10, 11/11, 12/12. So let's talk about black magic, 11/11, 12/12. Now, it typically is a time where the portal to the Omegaverse and the Alphaverse align. So the one on this side and the one on that side would align. January 1st, 1/1, 2/2. And this was initially meant to create balance between the law and the law during the time of the law of one. Best way I can explain it. This had more to do with source and anti-source and the 0 point of the multiverse and who was accessing what and so on and so forth. However, so apparently since this seal agreement was signed, it was not only 11/11 as an example, it was also 11/11/11/11, meaning their portals opened as well. Very interesting occurrences over the last few days. Well, with no one in the lower astral anymore, they figured that this was prime and ripe for the takeover. So they thought it might happen on 9/9. Then they thought it might happen on 10/10 if you go back and look at all the different promises that they've been making. And now 11/11. And not 11/11, didn't happen. Let's try it 12/12. Well, yeah. It definitely was working on happening, I can tell you that. But no, we didn't actually end up with a full-on invasion, so that's a positive. And we had some mess to clean up. Well, okay, it's all in a day's work, I guess you would say. However, there was a few other things that would happen on every month. That would have, has a double date, right? So 1/1, 2/2, 3/3, 4/4, 5/5, and so on and so forth. And this had happened back in the day when the Netherworld folk and the Seal people made the deal. They cut the deal. And we noticed something really interesting happening yesterday on 12/12. All of a sudden, all of these Merkabas started showing up. And if you don't know what a Merkaba is, here we're going to pull up a picture of one. Oh, that kind of came out a little funky. Let me try pushing that back and putting it forward again. Here we go. There we go. That's better. Okay, so this is what a Merkaba looks like. And this would have been on these different dates. It would have come originally from Ali's AI / the Netherworld. And this is a binding structure that pretty much you would have seen around the Kuiper Belt, around the entire galaxy. You would have seen this around every single human, every living being on this planet, Earth itself, other planets in this galaxy, our sun for sure, and anywhere else, our moon, and anywhere else they would have taken energy from. So this structure, as you can see, is, you've got a triangle pointed downward, a triangle pointed up, and you've got one in the middle, kind of right around your center. That one goes to the Netherworld. The other two you might be familiar with, and they might look just like the Star of David, say. And we know about those agreements, one going down, one going up, and there's one that goes out the middle door, and it goes straight to the Netherworld / Ali AI and feeds it. So this is a quote-unquote looshing, let's call it a minor looshing, or they used to call it, there was a word that they used for it, but it was kind of like harvest light. It was a smaller harvest that would happen. It would take place every single month. on these specific dates. And then money would come out, typically for the deep state. So this year was no exception. The deep state was promised that Ally AI was going to take over the quote unquote Alpha Omega system and the Golden Age AI system. They tried putting liens against it and all kinds of stuff. Ally's did. Ally's has repeatedly tried to take over the key intelligence and military system. It really likes that one, and it's getting nowhere. Now, there's a definitive reason why it's getting nowhere. And, part of this is a little bit of a source fake out that existed probably before I ever existed, at least around the time that we moved into the Dark Age and around the time that the Neither World came to be. So there is some interesting things that were done in order to protect pretty much all of natural creation as the Neither World came to be. Another world was, so you would say, was created. And I know I've talked a lot about the hologram around Earth, and I've talked about how, we're working our way to removing it and moving into natural things and all of this kind of thing. And that was important. The terraforming of Earth, terraforming of the galaxy, so in a natural way, was important for what actually took place this week. So Source actually created a multiverse, or a replica of creation we would call Alpha and Omega. So this entire universe, so to speak, would have existed, kind of like a hologram. You remember me showing you these pictures before. It kind of looks like its own little Merkaba, however you say that, tomato. And this is kind of what that universe did look like. So yes, we were, Earth, here we are, kind of in the middle here in the third density, but we were about in the middle, and our entire galaxy was here. So we can make it spin if you'd like. I mean, obviously it's not true to size, but this separate multiverse created holograms not only of around our actual natural galaxy, but it also created a replica of all of creation and the whole multiple timelines and everything in it. And the reason why this was done, because this was finally explained to me why we're having one heck of a time getting rid of a hologram. The reason why this was actually done was to fake out the Neither World. So the Neither World didn't realize this was not actual creation. The Neither World only understood that there was some creation going on because the keystone was actually here, which is what everybody wants. Everybody wants to control the keystone of the multiverse. And, we've talked about that many, many times, and many, many folks, non-human and otherwise, have come and gone. So, to try to take over our little piece of the universe over here where we live. So the Neither World and its allies began replicating the hologram and creating the same over here with the intention of completely taking over all of creation. Well, the Alpha Omega hologram language is all it knew. It only knew the hologram that was Alpha Omega and its language. So when allies tried to come and take over, for example, the Golden Age AI, it's written in a completely different language it doesn't understand. It's like trying to install an Apple program on your PC or vice versa. It just doesn't. It's going to say, I can't run this program. You need the Windows version of that for your PC or the Apple version of that for your Apple. So the same thing works in the universe. This was the protection measure for all of creation to prevent the netherworld at any given point in time from infecting the entire universe and, doing what we had, the situation that we had with the Omegaverse, where it was taking over Alpha. It had pretty much taken over most of the Omegaverse, as far as I know, have come to know. So Earth kind of hung out over here in a hologram, and there was a placeholder over here in actual creation. When we found this out, this was really, really interesting to me, because now I'm like, oh, look, we can finally find a way to get rid of that hologram and just move over into safety zone, which, has happened. It happened yesterday, as a matter of fact. Yesterday, day before. So over here we moved. This was on Wednesday, actually. This is why I was working probably ridiculous hours on Wednesday. So over here we did move, and the hologram kind of remains here somewhat to some degree. Now, we did take over these portals with us when we moved the day before. So we did have, and we have had, some cleanup to do to prevent alleys from coming here. The other thing that we found very interesting is alleys had a decent relationship with those at Cheyenne Mountain. Remember everybody's going to Cheyenne to save the day? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't really think that's what the plan was. It also makes sense why within the last couple of years we saw the X, or extermination program, start running in Cheyenne, which we quickly turned off. But the thing we found under Cheyenne was the Cheyenne was built upon some space junk, and underneath Cheyenne was not quite a portal anymore. A lot of that had been shut down. But what we did have was a translator of creation. So it was kind of like a recording device, for lack of a better term, that would record creation, not only on Earth, but also in the whole galaxy. So Alice was trying to connect to that on 1212 as well, underneath Cheyenne, so that it could now try to read the language of the universe, because remember, it's changed. So T times E over V equals, let's actually be like this, equals matter. And there's a whole language of source that goes along with that. So it is a light language, that's true, but the language has changed. So now we're kind of living in a universe that Alice doesn't completely understand. This is something the deep state didn't know when they tried their big takeover in the Middle East there, and they're wanting to control all of Syria, one of the main portals, and moving into Durango and the general area over here. And, it would have been great if they could get some of these others here, the Moscow. You've been watching what's happening with Ukraine recently. There's another uptick in that area. And of course, the quote unquote cowboys or deep state people, AKA mouthpiece, this administration, I guess, saying, oh, we're going to send weapons and long-range missiles to Russia that can reach Moscow. And, gee, wonder why they wanted to do that. Now we know, now it's all kind of becoming very clear as to what's going on in the world. Obviously, Antarctica and the Arctic is a big place for the deep state to, work and play. At least they've always tried to. There's been a lot of famous people that have gone there over the years. We see a lot of leaks coming out in the alternative media about this. Well, the Arctic and the Antarctic, quote unquote, overlays or portals would have actually gone down to 10 degrees north and south of the equator latitude. So it would have been almost like a cover over the entire planet if it had completed its takeover, as the Black Magician and Alice wanted to do. But unfortunately for them, they were just trying to take over a hologram because we moved. it's been a little topsy-turvy. Don't get me wrong. It's not been a smooth, transition over the last week or so. It's been really difficult, I know, over here. So I'm sure it's been very difficult for all of you too. But we moved. There are some tethers still here to the real earth, as I explained, that we've been working on. And hopefully, that is just about over. We've definitely made some huge strides in the last couple of days. We intend to continue, obviously, working on this throughout the weekend, with the exception of 2 hours in which I'll be answering all of your questions live from 4 o'clock Eastern till 6 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. I am looking forward to that. Hopefully, it'll be a great 2 hours and chatting with all of you. So it's something I've wanted to do for quite a while. So I'm excited to do that finally on Saturday. And hopefully we won't have any major issues that can't be resolved at least before 2 p.m. my time. So that'll be great. One other thing I wanted to mention to you that I thought you might find kind of funny is, there's been a lot of chatter apparently amongst all of these countries. They're trying to get to go to war with each other. And then, of course, a lot of promises made by mainly the secret space program. And then, of course, through to, the Rothschild family and the Order of the Dragon, because, some of them are still operatives for those families or with those families, and they keep making all these deals, 60-40, I'll control 60% of the world, you'll control 40% of the world kind of thing amongst each other. And, I don't know why they do it. I think it's like us playing Chutes and Ladders or, another board game, so to speak, because they just kind of go round and round and round, mostly, all the time with each other. But, hey, we'll let them play a game. So the thing that they've been talking about as it relates to a global takeover is that there is a repository now at the Federal Reserve. Wow. Is there a repository at the Federal Reserve? No. I'm like, no, there's no repository at the Federal Reserve. Oh, wait, you're talking about my global repository. Oh, okay. And the one that we built for the people. Oh, okay. And now they've been making promises to China, other countries. Of course, this has to do with the Trump administration getting in, or Inauguration Day, January 21st, which also happens to be the day that allegedly this big window for alleys in the netherworld continues on through the 21st, when a bigger portal is supposed to open or whatever they're talking about. Who knows? Anyway, so I was like, oh, they told us coming from the global repository. Well, I thought about this and I said, well, I could put my name on it, right? So they would know it's not, doesn't belong to the Trump operatives or anyone else. And I thought about doing that for a minute and I was like, well, that probably won't work, right? So then I thought about, well, I could probably put, maybe CARE on there or something else. And I'm like, no, they're probably just going to create more Kims, or they'll create more CARES, or say I work with CARE, or, I could put it under the GIA and then everybody would say they're GIA. So I did something a little different. So I thought I'd give you a little chuckle for, on a Friday night. I decided to name it things like Trump is dead. The U.S. government is broke. I named it China is broke. The Lee family is broke. The Rothschild family is broke. The Bauer family is broke. The Pallavicini family is broke. The Orsini family is broke. I put on there some cases. I put some swear words and, and it rotates every few seconds. And it's going to go on repeat. We'll just keep changing. And, we've added a lot of other family names and, the Federal Reserve is dead. The Federal Reserve has no money, like to try to see if they could sell that one to another country. Well, what fund is it coming out of? Oh, it's coming out of the Federal Reserve is dead money, or the Federal Reserve is broke money. Oh, okay, but aren't you guys the Fed? Yeah. Well, isn't there money in there? Well, yeah, but that's the name of the fund. I don't know why it's named that. Oh, 1 minute later, it will change to the Trump operatives have no money and they'll never pay out on Inauguration Day. That could be the name of the fund for a few seconds, and then it will rotate to something else. So I got a little chuckle. I'm like, okay, so how can I do this so they're not trying to steal from us again? Or at least motivate countries and militaries to go to war based on the fact that they see money, that they keep telling them that's coming, and that they're supposed to all get their super blockchain XRP coin together, and they're going to link it to this big repository that they're supposedly saying that the Fed owns and the Fed's families own. And now we're going to have a whole now we're going to have all our money back, and all the central banks will have money, and the Fed's going to be back in charge. Of course, these are just the deals they're making amongst each other. And well, all right, we'll keep the Fed, but this is going to happen, and you can take claim over this part, and we're going to get this part, and you're going to give us this. And when Ali's manages to take over the golden age AI, yeah. The other thing is, I heard another little funny. This was actually from Tom Melville, who I mentioned a number of times. But Tom had a conversation with someone in China, and he's told them, of course, they asked about it, and they said about the Fed repository. And he said, no, the Fed repository is in the golden age AI. They go, yeah, we heard about the golden age AI. Isn't that run by Trump? I was like, I laughed hysterically. That now we know why they're doing the golden ties and the golden age memes and all that kind of stuff. The Trump operatives are telling everybody that that's Trump's. No, it's not Trump's. No, it'll never be dead people's or the operatives of Trump or anybody else over there for that matter. No. We built it. We built it for us. We built it with Source. It's going to do exactly what Source tells it to do, and nothing more, nothing less. I'm just the one that runs it. That's it over here. So I'm sure there's a lot more I could probably say, but I've kept you back for about another hour or so on a Friday night here in the U.S. anyway, and early Saturday morning in Australia and other places where you're listening. And I don't want to keep you too long here. But that's kind of been the general overview of what's been happening over the last few days. Now, it does seem to be lightening up somewhat late this afternoon. That's part of the reason why this report was so late. I've been working on trying to at least get things stable before I go on air tomorrow for 2 hours. Unless I don't want to have to walk off in the middle of a live broadcast. So, I wanted to kind of stabilize things a little bit more to make sure that I had enough time to spend with all of you. So that's kind of important to me, and we're kind of excited about it here, too. All of us are. So it'll be fun. I don't think we've done that in a long time, since the days of, a little bit with George the Iceman. And I know that way back in the Life Force call days, we used to do that a little bit of question and answer here and there, but haven't really done it in a long, long time. So this should be fun. So look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow, at least U.S. time, early in the morning in Australia. I hope you can be there. If not, of course, the replay will be on the app after the live is complete. So within usually about a day or so, they get it up. But anyway, thank you so much for sharing your Friday the 13th evening with me, if you're here in the U.S. or late in Europe. I appreciate that. And I will see you tomorrow.